work on with my clients and my employees as an example of different skills that you could use in this industry, okay? You might already have skills that apply in this industry and don't even realize it, okay? One that I've been working on is PowerPoint presentations. Never really thought I'd have to, but here I am. So when I go out to crops, we're looking at the production, right? So farmers care about biomass, that's their bottom line, and the quality of its composition. That determines at the end of the year how much revenue they're going to make for their business, okay? When you're approaching an employer, especially a cultivator, you have to make sure that you are appealing to their goals, okay? Present yourself in a way where you're saying, hey, I have these skills and they may help with what you're doing in this way. Then you're a lot more valuable than, you know, some guy that just wants to hang out and trim all day, right? Here's a good example. I did my first soil test recently, and I had to dig through like 1.5 feet of snow to get to the soil. And a part of getting your permit in Utah, here's a good example of where I found a problem and became the solution. If you guys can teach yourself that, you can put yourself in a place where you can gain skills regularly that you never realized that you needed to have. So I go out and I collect soil samples, and then I submit them to a lab so that people can submit their hemp cultivation permit application. I realized recently that that was an obstacle for a lot of my clients, so I decided to become the solution in that problem. And I've been able to make a little bit of money off of that, mostly in drive time, but still. Like I said, I do research. This is Dr. Bugby, one of my heroes. He does some research at USU on cannabis, and I had the pleasure of touring his facility recently and showing him my research on, mostly it's aeroponic, hydroponic focused. I'm trying to grow more food with air. The chemistry behind that's really cool. And on that note, hydroponics are a very good skill set to have. If you have any experience in hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics, agriculture, you are already way ahead of a lot of people. Learning how to balance pH levels and nutrient solutions for different plant cultivation is a really big skill to have in this industry. This is an example of how I was able to use my culinary skills in the cannabis industry. We've been doing cooking with cannabis presentations. I'm working with Salt Lake Institute of Culinary Education on a cooking with cannabis course right now. So if you want to learn how to cook with cannabis and make products that you can sell to other people using products that are already certified, and maybe raw plant material, I'm still working on getting permission for that one. All right, here's another application. So if you have any education in chemistry, you have skills that can dominate this industry, okay? This is a chart exemplifying the efficiency of infusion into different fats, okay? And so when you're talking about making a product and pairing it with different oils, there are different temperatures and durations of temperatures that you need to take these alkaloids to in order for them to become bioavailable to humans. For example, THCA and CBDA are in a state that cannot interact with the human endocannabinoid receptor sites, okay? And you have to rip that A off with temperature and other processes in order for it to be medicinal for the person consuming it. We might also make this slideshow available online if you guys would like it later. Here's a really good example. I was asked to do this. I was really uncomfortable doing it, talking about myself. But I typed this up for one of the programs that I'm working with. And really what it is exemplifying some of the experience that I have and how it applies to that project, to that industry. I can't imagine that you guys don't have skills already that you can apply to this industry right now. So just try to brainstorm, what can you do and how can that tie into a business here, okay? As you can see, I like to cook. I bought this microscope with an $800 grant that I got for research from the federal government. Thank you. It comes with a 1080p camera, so I can look at invisibly small insects and take pictures of them, okay? I taught myself how to do this. This isn't because I'm a student. I knew that there were pests on lots of the crops I was working with, and I decided, because I have little pocket microscopes, I can see them moving around, but if you can't identify the pest, it's very, very difficult to organically remove that pest, okay? And when we're talking about cannabis, it's not just a food crop, okay? It's a medical crop. You have to take the highest level of care and sanitation in cultivating this crop for it to be considered quality enough to be liquidatable on the market. The bar is being set pretty high right now, so keep that in mind. And I've been able to make money off of identifying pests, okay? So anybody can go buy one of these microscopes and start teaching themselves about insect identification. It's not too complicated. Usually I use entomologists on Facebook to help me. I reach out in entomology groups and I'm like, hey guys, what's this? You know, and it's actually a really big help. Because I'm a plant scientist and a lot of bug scientist and entomologist. So learn to utilize the skills of other people, okay? If you're not a professional in something, if you're not an expert in something, reach out to people who are, and they will help you. It's hard to talk about, but I have social anxiety disorder. If it weren't for cannabis, I wouldn't be able to speak in front of you today. And one of the things I want to communicate to you guys is if you go out of your way to put yourself out there, to come to events like you did today, you will meet the people that you need to meet to get to the place that you want to go, okay? So you've already taken a really good first step. Be proud of yourself for that. This is me at the cannabis convention last year. My friend Brandon here invited me, and I'm so glad I came. 2 years ago. And then the year after that, last year, I was one of the speakers at Silicon Suds at the same location. Somehow I ended up on Fox News. Didn't find out till later. That was fun. So put yourself out there. If you walk away with any lesson from this presentation, please let it be that you have to go to where money is. It's not going to come to you. These skills are not going to come to you. You have to go find them. You have to put yourself in that position where you can get them. And make sure you have fun, you know. That's important. Make sure that you treat the plants with love. This is from one of, I'm so proud of this client. They're here today. I won't mention them by name. But this is their first season of cultivation, you guys. Would you guess that looking at these plants? This is the first time they ever grew. And they went out of their way to talk to the people who have the skills to be good at this. And they taught themselves everything by using the skills of other people like me and other experts in the industry. And I'm just through the roof proud of them. So I like to use this as an example. This is in South Utah. This one's in Moroni. We retrofitted a turkey barn. And worked out really well. It was all sold as smokables and extractable biomass. Within 2 weeks of it being harvested, it had all sold. So what cultivators want is big, beautiful plants. Like I said at the beginning, they want lots of biomass. That's their bottom line. Figuring out how you can help them to achieve that will make you more useful than people who don't. By the way, these are not hemp plants. They'll never get that big. The genetics just aren't built for it. So this is about the only letters that I put in here because I wanted it to be representative visually. This is another crop in South Utah. These are some of the things that the business owners are thinking of, right? Here's one that I don't ever want to deal with. You guys make websites. That's something that all of these new startup businesses want, and most of them don't want to deal with it. They're willing to pay you to do it. Client acquisition. There's a lot of people who have products and can't sell them, can't find events like these, so that's a really, really big one. Kind of touched on a lot of the other stuff. Investing and funding. This is a really big obstacle for a lot of startups. And so is realty, okay? Finding a location to start your business is one of the biggest obstacles for startup businesses. If you have any experience in realty, you can be a big asset in this industry. I'm going to skip past some of this so we don't run out of time. I do a lot of nutrient diagnostics. It can be very complicated because the characteristics of these nutrient deficiencies and overabundancies can overlap. They can look very similar. So it can take a long time to learn these things, but if you do, then cultivation itself becomes a lot easier. You'll have less problems because then you can learn to put in the nutrients that you need beforehand. There's a lot of different ways to grow this plant. There's a lot of right ways and a lot of wrong ways, but understanding nutrients will help you a lot. This is a chart that I just love because it exemplifies the ranges, the different macronutrients and micronutrients are available to the plant as far as pH. The pH of your water and your soil determines if the plant can even interact with certain nutrients. For example, manganese and iron are in the strongly acidic range as far as bioavailability, right? But potassium and sulfur are in the alkaline range, and so a lot of times you actually want to have it wave a little bit so the plant can actually access all of these nutrients. So understanding things like this can be a very, very good skill to have in this industry. Here's some more pests, real quick, except for this one because it's aphids. Who can guess what pests these are? Anybody? Yes, they're all mites. Okay, so this is broad mites, spider mites, and russet mites. And with a hand scope, that's about as good as you're going to get. Usually you need a compound microscope like the one I showed you guys to get those big blown-up pictures. But proper identification of these pests is a really good skill to have because that can tell you what predatory insect removes them, what organic treatment can remove them. Here's some other charts, kind of on the same topic. Different pathogens have different predators. Pretty much what it's exemplifying. I love ladybugs. There's a lot of problems with ladybugs. Identifying other problems with the plant is really important too. This is a sign of heat stress. When the leaves are cupping like this, it's an autonomic reaction that the plant has to being dehydrated. Okay, and the reason it cups like that is to reduce the surface area of the sun hitting it and also to pull in rain potentially. But a lot of times when the plant does this, it's already damaged. And so being able to recognize problems so that you can fix them and prevent them is a really good skill to have in this industry. This is an example of tobacco mosaic virus here in Utah. There's also lots of mutants in the cannabis industry. If you're working with feminized seeds, you're going to have lots of mutants, okay? The process of feminization, it causes mutations across the board. This is called polyploidy, or fasciation, and this is called variegation. It's a problem with the development of the chloroplast inside the cell. They can be interesting. They can also be problematic. Some of them are hermaphroditic and can actually make spores, specifically the polyploids. They're also very susceptible to powdery mildew, so identifying mutations is another skill that's good to have in this industry. Check this out. Can you even see the cannabis plant? Yeah, this is the first time I came out to a farm in Provo, and they didn't use any plastic culture. I would highly recommend plastic culture in Utah unless you have a very well-developed organic profile in your soil. The native plants love the native soil, even though it's full of salt and things like that. This soil had a lot of salt in it. As you can see, the cannabis plant didn't really grow at all. So soil science skills are a big thing to have in this industry. If you can amend soil and make it better, if you can remediate it, that's a huge skill set to have. It'll make a business sustainable in the long term. Also, being able to recognize when to harvest something is a really good skill to have. Materials like this are available all over the internet. Just be careful because some of them are incorrect or misportraying information, misunderstanding information. So vet your information, check it with multiple sources, check with experts in the industry. This is a beautiful chart. I'm a scientist, I love charts. This part of the chart, the green part, is the optimal level of photosynthesis and in correlation with transpiration, which is how plants push out moisture. It's how they photosynthesize, okay? And these are the temperatures and humidities that are ideal to maintain that Goldilocks zone for biomass production, okay? If you can interpret statistical data, you are of value in this industry. There's a lot of data companies starting up, and I would say that some need to focus a little more on how they can be applicable, but there's definitely jobs in data and software and hardware in this industry, especially for environmental data. Being able to identify the anatomy of the plant is very important. You do not want males. Males are duds. You don't want hermaphrodites. Any pollen will contaminate your crop, because what happens is when the female becomes pollinated, it changes its biochemistry. Instead of making the cola full of alkaloids, it's diverting that energy to seed production. You'll end up with a much weaker product by the end. It's also full of seeds. No one wants seeds unless they're buying seeds. So, understanding the respiratory system of the plant is really important. I like to talk about how the roots really need oxygen. They don't need CO2. They don't photosynthesize, so their biochemistry is different from the top of the plant that does produce CO2 and does use, saying it backwards, does produce CO2 and uses CO2. Understanding the nitrogen cycle is fundamental. Okay, if your soil is alive, it will make available the nutrients your plant needs to grow. Okay, I know people who never ever add nutrients to their grow because their soil is perfectly formulated. There are lots of different products that can be produced with cannabis. Let's skip past this. So, textiles are booming. They're on a very upward track. If you look at market analytic companies online, you'll see that textiles are one of the biggest projections for the future. A lot of cultivators are just composting it, not realizing that the main stem can actually be sold to textile processors. Okay. This is some hash that we made. Lots of clients are very curious about how to make extracts and concentrates. This is made with dry ice, so we use no liquid solvent, and we pressed it using different micron sizes on our bags so that we can end up with different particle micron sizes for our end product. And as you'll see, it's lighter and becomes darker because you end up with more plant material, okay? In Utah, that can be a good thing. You don't want to extract and have it go hot and then all of a sudden have a product that you can't do something with. So understanding these techniques and how to take your product and turn it into something else that's sellable can be really good. There's lots of people sitting on biomass right now and have no idea how to get rid of it because they can't sell it based on their COA report. If you do it for long enough, you'll also get hemp feet, hash feet. And we make lots of different products. This is an ethyl extraction. It's called Green Dragon. And it's really funny. We just pour it into the bags after, shake it up, and pour it out, so you can actually extract from the bag. So this is a temperature chart of the different temperatures and ranges that you have to take different alkaloids to in order to decarboxylate them, to make them bioavailable for humans. Let's say you have a variety of cannabis that has 5% CBD and 20% CBDA. All of that CBDA is potentially medical if you decarboxylate it, okay? This is the process of decarboxylation where we're taking THCA using heat to rip off the A, so it's just THC. Your body can't interact with THCA. Understanding those mechanisms is really important as a skill for product development and extraction. Also understanding that there's beautiful flavors in this plant, and people will buy those. They are valuable. Restaurants around the world are buying them right now. Having skills in extraction itself is very valuable. I would recommend that you don't even get into extraction unless you have had some amount of training. There are people who die working with these hazardous chemicals because they didn't understand the hazards when they started. So do your research before you enter this industry. Most of the people I know who are successful at extraction have a degree in chemistry. Let's get past this one. And once again, understanding, hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics systems, and then how to actually get it from fish poo into plant food is another really important process. You have to culture them in vats typically that have oxygen and that also don't have oxygen to transform it into a bioavailable state for the plant. These are some of the students and employees that I've been working with over the last year. Two of them are becoming my business partners for my second business. We're doing a custom cannabis soil business this year. and it's going to be specific to the variety of cannabis and also the soil it's grown in. So I'll be culturing microbes from all over the place. And I've already collected a lot of biological samples to do this with, so it's lots of fun. This is some of the other stuff we're working on this year, doing a cooking with cannabis course. Mentioned that before, and also an online course through UVU. We're still getting that worked out. And should hopefully have time for questions this time. Yeah. Any questions? Hopefully I didn't go too fast.